The Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil flows through this 21-mile-wide choke point. Right now, it is effectively closed, and the United States Navy has just deployed 27 warships, 3 aircraft carrier strike groups, and more than 100 fighter jets to force it open. The truce between the US and Iran expires in 4 days. Iran's top military advisor just warned that American ships can definitely be exposed to our missiles, and we can destroy them. He also said that if the US invades, Iran would take thousands of hostages and demand $1 billion each. This is not a drill. This is the largest naval buildup in the Persian Gulf in generations, and the clock is ticking. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes against Iran, killing top Iranian military leaders, including a key advisor to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran retaliated by closing the Strait of Hormuz, effectively shutting down commercial shipping through the most important oil transit choke point in the world. Mines were laid, tankers stopped moving, global oil prices spiked. After 5 weeks of open warfare, the US and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire on April 7th. That truce was supposed to lead to peace talks in Pakistan. Those talks failed. Both sides accused each other of excessive demands. On April 13th, President Donald Trump announced the US would begin blockading all ships entering or exiting Iranian ports. The Strait of Hormuz became a naval battleground. Here is what the US Navy has assembled in the region, according to the USNI Fleet Tracker and Stars and Stripes. The USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group is operating off the coast of Africa and heading to join the 5th Fleet buildup. The USS Gerald R. Ford, which just broke the record for the longest carrier deployment since the Vietnam War at 295 days, is already in the Mediterranean and has transited the Suez Canal. In total, at least 27 Navy vessels, roughly 41% of all actively deployed U.S. Navy ships worldwide, are now operating in or heading to the Middle East. But the blockade is not just about ships. U.S. Air Force and Navy fighter jets are patrolling the skies. FA-18 Super Hornets, launching from carriers, F-16 Fighting Falcons, and F-15E Strike Eagles. Over 100 fighter and surveillance aircraft are involved. Satellites are tracking every Iranian naval movement. The mission is twofold: enforce the blockade to throttle Iran's economy, and simultaneously reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping. The U.S. blockade is being enforced in the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, east of the Strait of Hormuz. When a ship attempts to enter or exit Iranian ports, U.S. forces intercept it. In the first 48 hours, 9 ships were turned around. None made it past U.S. forces. The U.S. has not yet had to seize any vessels. Compliance has been voluntary after warnings. But the challenge is far more complex than simply stopping ships. Iran has likely mined the Strait of Hormuz. 2 U.S. destroyers recently sailed through the strait specifically to clear mines and demonstrate safe passage. Admiral Daryl Caudle, Chief of Naval Operations, described the problem. You just have to think about this from a multi-dimensional problem set. That's a tough challenge. Iran's asymmetric warfare capabilities. Swarms of small attack boats, anti-ship cruise missiles, ballistic missiles designed to hit moving naval targets, and drones, including Shahed one-way attack drones that Iran has used against Gulf states. Based on official statements from Iranian military leaders and open-source intelligence, Iran's top military advisor, Mohsen Rezai, a former commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary Guards, warned on state TV, American battleships can definitely be exposed to our missiles, and we can destroy them. He also said, if the U.S. invades Iran, We would take thousands of hostages, and then for each hostage, we would get $1 billion. These are not empty threats. Iran has demonstrated its ability to strike U.S. allies in the region. On April 8th, hours after the U.S. announced the ceasefire, Iran launched missiles and drones at the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Kuwait's air defense system shot down 28 Iranian drones, but key oil facilities, power plants, and desalination plants were damaged. Iran has also threatened to target U.S. bases throughout the Middle East. During the 5 weeks of open warfare, Iranian missiles struck American bases multiple times. Based on statements from military analysts and the current trajectory of U.S.-Iran tensions, what could happen after April 21st? Scenario A. Extended truce. Diplomacy succeeds. A second round of peace talks, possibly in Islamabad or another neutral capital, produces a framework agreement. Iran agrees to halt its nuclear enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief. The blockade is lifted. The Strait of Hormuz reopens. Global oil prices stabilize. Scenario B. Limited conflict. The truce expires without a deal. Iran attempts to break the blockade by launching swarms of attack boats and anti-ship missiles at U.S. vessels. The U.S. Navy repels the attack, destroying Iranian naval assets. Fighting remains confined to the Strait and Gulf waters. The blockade continues. Scenario C. Full escalation. Iran launches ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE. The U.S. responds with airstrikes against Iranian military infrastructure, missile launch sites, naval bases, air defense systems. The conflict expands beyond the Strait of Hormuz. Ground invasion is not imminent. Analysts believe that would require weeks of additional preparation. But U.S. officials have reportedly discussed the possibility of strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, including the buried Fordo enrichment site. Fact: the U.S. Navy is the most powerful naval force on Earth. But even with 27 warships and 3 carrier groups, there are limits. First, Iran has been preparing for this scenario for decades. Its anti-access/area denial, a 2/AD strategy, is designed specifically to counter U.S. carrier strike groups. Anti-ship ballistic missiles, including variants of the Chinese DF-21D, threaten U.S. ships from hundreds of miles away. Second, the blockade requires sustained presence. Analysts estimate the Navy needs at least 2 aircraft carriers, more than a dozen destroyers, minesweepers, and support ships to effectively enforce the blockade and reopen the strait simultaneously. The U.S. has that now, but for how long? Third, crew fatigue is a real concern. The USS Gerald R. Ford has been deployed for 295 continuous days, the longest since Vietnam. Its crew is exhausted. The George H.W. Bush only left Norfolk on March 31. It is fresh. But if this drags on, the Navy will need to rotate forces. Fourth, Iran has not yet used its most capable weapons, long-range ballistic missiles, potentially armed with unconventional warheads, and its fleet of submarines, some of which are highly capable Kilo-class boats. This is not just about oil. This is about the global balance of power. If the U.S. successfully reopens the Strait of Hormuz and forces Iran to the negotiating table, it will send a message to China, Russia, and North Korea. American naval power remains unchallenged. If the U.S. fails, if Iran maintains its closure or successfully strikes U.S. warships, the consequences are catastrophic. Global oil prices would spike, potentially triggering a worldwide recession. America's allies in the Gulf would question U.S. commitment. China would see an opportunity to expand its influence in the region. Russia would celebrate a strategic defeat for Washington. The U.S. has already imposed new sanctions targeting Iran's oil transport network, including tankers, companies, and individuals involved in petroleum shipping. The goal is economic strangulation, but Iran is not isolated. It has allies, Russia, China, North Korea, who can provide weapons, technology, and diplomatic support. The truce expires April 21st. That is 4 days from now. Both sides are posturing. Both sides are preparing for the worst. Here is what you need to understand. The U.S. has assembled overwhelming force. 27 warships, 3 carrier groups, 100+ fighter jets, and thousands of Marines. Iran has asymmetric options: mines, small attack boats, anti-ship missiles, drones, and the ability to close the strait indefinitely. The question is not who has more firepower. The question is, who blinks? If Iran backs down, the strait reopens. Sanctions tighten. The regime faces internal pressure. If the U.S. blinks, if a ship is sunk, if casualties mount, if the American public turns against another Middle East war, Iran wins. Analysts suggest the most likely outcome is neither a clean victory nor a catastrophic defeat. Instead, a prolonged standoff. The blockade continues. The strait remains contested. Neither side achieves its full objectives, and the world holds its breath every time a tanker tries to pass through the 21-mile choke point. The USS Gerald R. Ford's crew has been at sea for 295 days. They want to go home. The USS George H.W. Bush just arrived. The fight may just be beginning. This is the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil, 27 U.S. warships, and a clock ticking toward zero.